We've talked a good deal on this channel about the state of the Six Flags chain, and well, here is another piece to that conversation. It has officially been announced as of May 1st, 2025, that Six Flags America will be closing at the end of this year. Despite the fact that Six Flags has not invested much into this park in, well, shall we say a very long time, it's still a little bit out of the blue. I don't claim to be an insider or anything like that, but I hear no rumblings of this park closing anytime soon, never mind this year. So let me give you some of the highlights of the press release. This will give you a good framework as to what's going to be happening to this park, what it's going to look like in the near future, and all that type of stuff. And then we'll get into some more speculative things towards the end. The first question that comes to many people's minds is, what's going to happen to this park after it closes? Well, they say that the park property is going to be marketed for redevelopment as part of portfolio optimization program. For any people hoping that this park would continue to operate, that doesn't look super likely, unless it happens to be purchased by another theme park operator. You know, it's interesting because California's Great America in Santa Clara obviously was sold to Prologis a few years ago. Because Prologis is a real estate developer, this park, when it closes within the next decade, is likely not going to continue as a theme park. They're going to use it for different things. The difference between CGA and Six Flags America, though, is that when Great America was announced to close, it was announced that it was bought just about at the same time. In other words, we could guess this park's exact future pretty much from the beginning because we knew a real estate developer was buying that land. Six Flags America currently does not have a buyer for that land. All that to say, I'll be very curious to see who buys this land in the future. I'm assuming it is going to get bought by somebody at some point. Right now, all we know is that Six Flags America will stop operating after November 2nd, 2025. That'll be the last day of operation. So you will be able to experience this park and the water park Hurricane Harbor next door throughout the 2025 season. But after that's over, it's all over. Here's how the press release puts it. Quote, "As part of our comprehensive review of our park portfolio, we have determined that Six Flags America and Hurricane Harbor are not a strategic fit with the company's long-term growth plan," said Six Flags President and CEO Richard A. Zimmerman. "After reviewing a number of options, we believe that marketing the property for redevelopment will generate the highest value and return on investment. We anticipate strong interest in the property and will continue to strategically pursue portfolio optimization opportunities as we work to unlock the full value of our portfolio." We all know how these types of things are. There's a lot of words, but they don't actually really say anything. Regardless, I think it gives you an idea of what they're thinking about Six Flags America. Their best option was simply to get rid of it. And frankly, I don't think a ton of us are terribly surprised by this end conclusion. I just didn't think we'd see it so soon. I know we've walked through it before on this channel, but this park's coaster history is pretty depressing, at least in the 21st century. Their most recent coaster addition was in 2014 with Ragin' Cajun, but that was a relocation. In 2012, they received then Apocalypse, now Firebird. That was also a relocation. If you go past these two coasters, you have to go all the way back to 2001 to find the last original coaster here with Batwing. That is absolutely wild. I mean, heck, Tom Brady was in just his second season at that point. But regardless, it is interesting when you talk about Batwing because this Vekoma Flying Dutchman has been on the chopping block for a while. At least it's been rumored to be so. And now, at the end of this year, we will finally see it get removed in a sort of odd twist with its whole park coming down with it. And that also marks the end of an era to the Vekoma Flying Dutchman. We saw Firehawk removed in 2018 at Kings Island, Nighthawk removed last year at Carowinds, and Batwing this year. These were the world's first major flying coasters, and now we're going to say goodbye to them for good. Let's segue into talking about some of the other coasters at this park and which ones could potentially be relocated. Unfortunately, because of the age of a lot of these coasters, I don't think there's a great shot for many of them to be relocated. Wild One is the best example of this. I think this coaster is going to be done. It was already relocated once, and for a coaster that opened in the 1910s, it's pretty impressive that it's still running as well as it is. For the same token of age, I think Firebird, the former B&M stand-up coaster, now floorless coaster, is going to be done. And I also think Professor Screamore Skywinder is going to be done. I know they recently did some work on this, but I can't see them relocating in SLC. I also don't think Roar has a very good shot. This ride is over 25 years old and is not particularly well loved. Nor is it cared for very well by the park. The two kid/family coasters I think have a chance, and so does Joker's Jinx. This ride is just over 25 years old, so how many good years does Joker's Jinx have left? Ultimately, I have absolutely no idea, but if it has some good years left, maybe it would be a decent addition to a smaller park like a Frontier City or Great Escape. So those are 8 of the park's 9 coasters, but to me, by far the most interesting ride here is Superman Ride of Steel. This intimate hypercoaster is the best coaster in the entire park, but it would kind of be a nightmare to relocate, and this ride takes up a lot of space and has a very odd layout. When you see the version at Darien Lake, it makes a lot more sense, but between the straight sections and massive helixes, this ride takes up a huge footprint. Not too many parks have the space to plop a ride like this down. And once again, there's an age consideration. This coaster opened in 2000, so by the time it closes, it'll be 25 years old. Man, what a great way to celebrate its 25th anniversary, huh? In terms of coasters being relocated, this would probably be one of the more expensive ones that we've seen. So for some of those reasons, I really have no idea what the future of this coaster holds. Let me know down in the comments below. Do you think Superman Ride of Steel will find a new home, or do you think it'll go down with its park? It's always too bad when we have to say goodbye to a park, especially when its operator really didn't give it a fair shake in terms of investment. Something I've kind of been thinking was possible, if not very likely, for a long time was parks being removed from this chain. Because the logic is, if you have a Cedar Fair chain and a Six Flags chain that merge into one Six Flags chain, wouldn't they remove assets? Because if you keep all the same assets and keep all the debt that they're already coming in with, then ultimately what do they gain besides the fact that they can call themselves the biggest chain in North America? This merger, in my estimation, was ultimately a financial decision. When you start getting rid of assets, then you can start to regain some of that debt that you have built up on both sides of the chain. This concept for mergers is not revolutionary, and I'll keep this sports rabbit hole brief, but in 2024, the 8-team XFL and the 8-team USFL merged to form the UFL. This was a pretty large-scale merger between 2 professional spring football leagues, and of course, all of us fans hoped that there would be 16 total teams, but that wasn't the case. They reduced it down to 8 total, 4 from each side. And when you think about it, it really shouldn't be that surprising. If you keep the same amount of teams, then ultimately, what are you gaining by merging? By the same token, for Six Flags, if you keep the same amount of parks indefinitely, what are you really gaining? This is the main reason why I've kept asking this question. Are parks going to get removed? And, well, here is the first strike, Six Flags America. The park will be open throughout 2025, and the silver lining is that we have a full season to experience Six Flags America one last time. So if you're in the area, or if you haven't gone yet, try to give it a visit. So there you have it. As of May 1st, 2025, Six Flags America is officially on the chopping block.